West Ham versus Chelsea at the London Stadium. The early kickoff on Saturday. London Stadium's not been a happy hunting ground for Chelsea in recent seasons, and the turmoil off the field continues. There's a battle in the boardroom for the Blues. Todd Boehly versus Begdad Egbali. It just never stops at Chelsea. The drama never stops, and despite the positive result on the pitch against Bournemouth last weekend, Chelsea seems to be in trouble in the boardroom. I don't know what you guys think about it. I'm worried as a Chelsea fan because I've never seen it in the history of football, a team be successful on the pitch if there's troubles off the pitch.
What's actually going on though? What's the problem? Why is there beef?
So when Todd Boehly put together the consortium to buy Chelsea when Roman Abramovich was sanctioned in 2022, he didn't have the capital to buy Chelsea outright with his own money. So he created Blueco, which involved him and a few other investors, as well as Clear Lake Capital. Todd Boehly faced it up, and that's why a lot of the ire and frustration from Chelsea fans directed to Todd Boehly. But in truth, he wasn't the man pulling the strings. 61.5% of the shares or of the ownership of Chelsea belongs to Clear Lake Capital, that are headed by Egbali. And right now, they're at loggerheads. There's three fundamental reasons why Chelsea have got issues in the boardroom. There's been disputes over the new ground in terms of whether Chelsea redevelop Stamford Bridge or move to a new ground. The direction of Chelsea going in terms of transfers, the policy has obviously been well discussed in regards to Chelsea handing out long contracts for players and targeting younger players that haven't got Premier League experience. And the key factor as well is Mauricio Pochettino being let go. He was very much Todd Boehly's man. Egbali had different ideas. Of course, he's got the ear of Chelsea's directors of football. And that's where Chelsea are really at problems at the moment in terms of in the boardroom, they've got people who've got different ideas and different notions in terms of running the football club. And Todd Boehly, with experience in terms of running American teams, has got his own ideas. And Egbali, who's been very, very present at the Chelsea training ground, at the ground, almost doing the Roman Abramovich, has got his own ideas. And I feel like there has to be a resolution if Chelsea want to achieve what they need to achieve.
I think it's fair to say that at some point the board problems are going to spill onto the pitch. I think right now Chelsea have got a good group of players. I think Maresca's a good coach for what it's worth. And I think in time, if he's given the sort of room and the freedom to do what he feels is right, I think he'll get Chelsea competing again. Maybe not for the title straight away, but certainly as a Champions League club. But the boardroom stuff is important because I witnessed the same thing at Arsenal.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Like, at what point and how, you said it can sometimes bleed onto the pitch. What does that look like?
So at Arsenal, it looked like this. And I think this is something that you might find at Chelsea as well. You had Alisher Usmanov's group that were trying to take full control. And you had the KSE group who are now obviously in full control of the football club. And what you had was two groups of people that both had ambitions to own the entire club. And what that meant was there was a reluctance to invest and to spend money because both of them were looking at each other and thinking, well, if I put investment in here, I'm going to drive up your share price, which means it's going to cost me more money in the long run to purchase your shares. So you end up with what's like a standoff where both sides are standing there and the club just stagnated. You could see it. Arsenal's transfer policy was really poor at the time. There wasn't a lot of money being spent. Remember that summer famously where Wenger only signed Peter Cech and everybody was like, hold on a minute, we need way more than that. That was a result of what was happening upstairs. So it might not have an impact today or tomorrow, but at some point down the line, if this is not resolved, it will bleed onto the pitch.
I think Chelsea are in a slightly different position because they need to recoup capital quickly. That's why you've seen Chelsea selling hotels, potentially selling the women's team back to themselves because they need Champions League football. So the investment has been there because Chelsea, as part of the model, needs European football to sustain the money that they've spent already. And so it's slightly different to Arsenal's situation. But you can only sell a hotel once. You can only sell the women's team once before you need to start getting results on the pitch to fund the football club. And what Roman Abramovich did do on his way out from Chelsea is he cleared the club of debt. So they haven't had to contend with that. But in terms of adhering to FFP or PSR regulations, Chelsea need to start winning football matches quickly. And that's why there's been such heavy investment.
I think the good news for Chelsea on the pitch is although the form has been up and down, I can see a style. I can see what they're trying to do.
Can you?
Yeah, more than, say, we just spoke about Erik ten Hag at United. Considering how long Ten Hag's had versus Maresca, and to be fair, I watched a lot of Leicester under Maresca, and I don't think they're similar in the sense that Chelsea have many more players that are sort of technically advanced, but also physically advanced compared to, say, the Leicester team. But the good thing about this Chelsea side is I'm looking at this 11 and I'm going, that 11 makes sense to me. And there's been, under Pochettino, those times I'm going, that 11 makes no sense to me. And I'd like scratch my head and go, why are you just putting anyone anywhere? In this, the only one I've got circled here is Vega, because obviously you've got Enzo Fernandez, and how does he integrate him? The good thing about that is Enzo Maresca's going, I've got a £100 million midfielder, and I just don't vibe with this guy. So I'm going to pick a different option in there that makes it work for us.
I think that's what maybe attracted Chelsea to Enzo Maresca, though, is that Enzo Maresca is very clear in what he wants. And he would have sat down with them, I'm sure, and said, this is what I'm looking to do. Whereas with Maurizio Pochettino, there was an experimental period at the beginning of last season. The results were up and down. Eventually, he found his way and he put Chelsea back on the right path. But I think the fact that Maresca is very forthright in saying, this is what I'm going to do. Everybody was talking about the size of the squad, and he's sitting there going, it might be a big squad in your eyes, but it's not in mine. I know who my players are. I know who my 21, 22 are. So maybe that's the key to him being popular at Stamford Bridge. But I agree with Nubaid. I think they've got some really good young players, and I think there is a style coming through. So it makes sense to me to say that Chelsea in time are going to be a very good side again.
I do think we will be a good side. I think one of the issues that might present itself with having such a deep squad and a very, very talented squad is that you look at a player like Nicholas Jackson, for example, who started the season pretty well, scored two league goals already, didn't have the best game against Bournemouth. Christopher Nkunku comes on, scores a goal. Does that mean you drop Jackson straight away and you start Nkunku? And you saw Jadon Sancho come off the bench, play very, very well, picked up the man in the match, get the assist for Nkunku. Does that mean you drop Neto and start Jadon Sancho? How do you find consistency and how do you keep all these players happy when you've got such a deep and talented squad? Where do you fit in João Felix in this equation?
That's part of where I'd probably agree with Harry, that's when the boardroom problems or decisions will bleed onto the pitch. Because at the moment you're going, it's Neto or Sancho. And in an ideal world, a lot of managers are going, I'd love to have both. But in Chelsea's scenario, it's not just Neto and Sancho, it's Palmer, it's Noni Madueke, it's Jackson. Suddenly you've got a lot of these players, and that's because of potentially bad decisions made upstairs. But that's where I think you need someone like Enzo, who says, I like Neto, I don't care about Sancho's reputation, or I really like Jackson, I don't care how much you pay for Nkunku. That's where, as a Chelsea fan, I'd be going, a little bit like Arteta. I'm not saying it's similar at all, but the feeling of, I just trust this guy more than maybe Pochettino. Pochettino for me is a great manager, but there was, in my opinion, a lot of times where he'd go, how do I play 22 guys at the same time? And that just doesn't work. And Chelsea have other problems as well. Reece James, who's like been injured I don't think we're going to see him anytime soon. Maybe he's going to integrate Chilwell back into the side, but Cucurella's been in good form. Yeah. It's a nice position to be in. On the flip side, look at West Ham. What is happening there? I thought I was backing him. I was like, West Ham are finishing top 7 this season. This is my team. Same. Now I'm looking at this 11 and I'm going, what's going on?
I think that sometimes you can make too many signings in a summer and you can end up with no continuity as a result. Now, obviously, they moved on from David Moyes and the football was going to look different under Lopetegui. I don't think Lopetegui is your typical Spanish coach, though. He's not the type that's going to come in and play this swashbuckling football, which is what the West Ham fans were crying out for. I tipped at the beginning of the season Nicholas Füllkrug to be one of the flops of the season because I don't think he's that good. Just being completely honest there. I covered one of West Ham's games in pre-season. It was their last friendly, and I know it's just a pre-season game, but they didn't look ready. They didn't look like they all understood what each other was meant to be doing. And I put that down at the time to new manager, new players. It's just a natural teething problem. But as the season goes on, they need to find better results. They need to be performing at a much higher level because there's been a lot of investment in that side. And I just don't really see where they're going. It
was weird against Fulham on the weekend because he dropped Paqueta, which was a strange decision. He acknowledged his mistakes and he made changes very, very early on. But they were so sluggish in that first half against Fulham and they didn't perform well. It was a tale of two halves though. In the second half, they definitely deserved the equaliser. Obviously, Danny Ings coming on and scoring late equaliser. Who would have thought that we were saying his name after West Ham spent how much in this summer? Yeah. But he saved them at the death with that goal. And you talked about Füllkrug. It's so telling with West Ham again that they spend so much money on strikers, but they always fall back to Mikel Antonio, who started that game against Fulham. And he's getting to a point right now where I don't think he's necessarily the answer for West Ham long term. But Füllkrug wasn't even in the squad. I'm not too sure what the reason was against Fulham. And they've just got an issue in terms of connectivity. The side doesn't seem to work. They're not gelling as well as you expect them to, especially they've got so many talented players. Kudus, Paqueta, Jarrod Bowen. The midfield's a bit of an issue as well. I think they don't really know where they want to go. I think they're struggling to let go of Thomas Souček, who started against Fulham but looked very, very poor. And so they've got so many kind of niggling issues that they need to sort out. But I think on the whole, I don't think we were wrong to point out West Ham as a team that could perform very well this season because they've got one of the best squads in the Premier League. It's about finding that right style of play and trying not to get these players to unlearn what they learned under David Moyes, but they were so used to playing a style of football under Moyes, who was a very pragmatic manager. Not too dissimilar to Lopetegui, but Lopetegui reminds me a bit more of Marco Silva, where he's got this facade of being progressive, but really and truly is pretty pragmatic. But there are patterns of play that West Ham are not understanding under Lopetegui, which I think they'll pick up towards the back end of the season.
I think they will improve. I think they have to improve because of the quality of player they got. You mentioned Bowen, Kudus, Paqueta. These are really good players. But I do worry for West Ham because I think they're struggling with a bit of an identity crisis at the moment. They were one thing under David Moyes. David Moyes generally did very well. West Ham fans will argue differently, but I felt that he generally did quite well. He won them a European trophy. And now it's like, well, where do we go next? Because everyone's fed up of the football. Let's be more progressive. But are you still going to get the same results if you open up? And I think Lopetegui understands that the transition is going to be slow. You'd hope that he's got the time from the board to try and make this work. I don't think they're going to be in any trouble or anything, West Ham. But if they finish in 9th, 10th place, is that a good season for West Ham given the investment? It probably isn't.
I mean, it's probably just a bit of a transition season. You have to. West Ham fans I always find interesting. They want to play sexy football and finish in the top four. But then at the same time, you look at your squad and I go, that back four's not finishing in the top four, let's be honest. I think on your point about like the identity crisis, that front four sums it up for me. You've got Jared Bowen, who's like a finisher. You've got Fulker, who wants the ball tossed up in the air. You've got Paqueta, who's a technical player. And you've got Kudus, who's a road runner. Those four guys, to make them jealous, you're going to have to sacrifice something. And that's why I think under Moyes, one of the best versions of West Ham was when Paqueta was playing off the left, Kudus off the right, Bowen up front.
I do think
the balance was nicer.
I do think that Souček, as you mentioned, is one of the issues.
Yeah.
Souček inside the opposition's penalty area, when the ball breaks loose, great. But outside of that, does he give you enough? Is he going to get on the ball and dictate play? Is he even the destroyer or the breaker up of play that he maybe was in years gone by? I don't think he is. I don't think his all-round game is sophisticated enough, and he's one that they need to move away from.
All right, score predictions, Kweku. Chelsea.
Never confident going into a game against West Ham, especially at their place. Early kickoff as well, which I hate it. I'm going for a draw in this one. It'll be a 1-1 draw, unfortunately.
I was going to go with a 1-1 draw as well.
I saw 1-1 draw in a previous result and I thought 1-1 draw.